Hello and welcome back to the Publisher podcast from Media Voices. I'm Peter Houston and we're exploring the people and the products powering publishing, both through this podcast and in our adjacent weekly newsletter, which you can sign up for at voices.media. This week I spoke with Zakhar Protsiuk, Chief Operations Officer at the Kyiv Independent from his office in Kyiv, ahead of the Kyiv Independent's 4th anniversary. If you don't know the Kyiv Independent, it's an award-winning English language news media outlet covering Ukraine and Eastern Europe for the rest of the world. It had reporters on the front line of the war and an investigations unit covering Russian war crimes, but it also covers Ukrainian business, culture and even travel. The one thing that struck me in speaking with Zakhar is how focused he was on what we might consider the normal elements of building a media business. Of course we spoke about the war, but we spoke just as much about audience acquisition and retention, trust and churn. I asked Zakhar if it was possible to separate everyday media operations from the impact of the Russian invasion, about revenue diversification and a brand shift from donations to a membership model. But first I asked him about the Kyiv Independent's origin story.
It's a new startup, which is 4 years old now. It's operated out of Kyiv, Ukraine. And it's essentially a Ukrainian news publication that reports on Ukraine and Eastern Europe in English language. That aspect is really important to highlight because we are reporting for people all around the world who consume journalism in English and are interested in Ukraine and the region, right? So it's not the usual model where you report for the local audience. It's more of an sort of the way I like to call it is we are a global media on a niche topic. So the Kyiv Independent was started in November 2021. It was already like a few months before Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It was the conversation about that was already looming in the air. If you remember, then Joe Biden, the president, went out and said that Russia might invade Ukraine. The conversation was already sort of going, and that was the moment when the owner of another media in Ukraine called Kyiv Post essentially fired the whole team, the whole editorial team, because he wanted to have more control over it, and he had a few sort of pushbacks from politicians on the reporting, and he just went on and fired the whole team. That was an incredibly stupid moment to do it, to be honest, given that the paper that sort of those journalists worked was also English language, so losing English language voice from Ukraine was not really a good idea. So the way Kyiv Independent was born, it was essentially this newsroom from that paper and the consulting company called Genomics, where I worked at the time, together co-founded the Kyiv Independent. And this was how it was born, essentially. The idea was to move very quickly. For two reasons. Reason number one is to take over that audience of Kyiv Post, because Kyiv Post stopped publishing for a few weeks. They started hiring the new team that would be more loyal and sort of the usual, I think, story of independent sort of independence takeover. So that was one reason, and the other reason there was a gigantic story to cover of Russia potentially invading Ukraine. So we had to move really fast, set up, website, everything in like weeks. And Kyiv Independent started publishing a week after that moment, launched with a newsletter. The first product was Ukraine Daily, is a daily newsletter. The website came a bit later. We launched our membership model on Patreon to move things fast. And then that was kind of how it's going. We got, I would say, a decent international attention to this situation. A lot of media covered it, a lot of embassies covered it. I think we got a sort of like a bump at the beginning, but it's fair to say that Kyiv Independent at that moment was a very young, very, very sort of just the beginning of something. It was around 18 people working there at the time. So when Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, that was really sort of the moment where so much attention and the demand for our work started to happen very fast. We suddenly became one of the largest journalistic voices out of Ukraine. In the matter of weeks, our Twitter followership grew from 30,000 to 2 million. Like a lot of people started referring to the Kyiv Independent, to what was happening on the ground. And that was an incredibly important moment for the Kyiv Independent to do their job, to do our job, and to deliver on our journalism, but also a moment of sort of deciding what we want to be. That was actually a point where I joined the team full time. So I wasn't from the November full time. I was helping out a bit. So helped them set up a Telegram channel back in, I remember, February, on the first day of the invasion. There was a lot of things happening, but I joined full time in the spring 2022, essentially with the main mission of that transitioning from that 20 people team to becoming that global publication. And that was sort of the ambition that we still have to this day, 4 years after. And this is what I've been doing there.
I remember that time. I spoke to you, I spoke to Jakob, and all the world was looking at what was happening. It was this new thing. I gave money to the Patreon. Loads of people I knew gave money to the Patreon. It was this huge thing for anyone that cared about journalism. But now you're 4 years in, and I think, you sent me some information over, and one of the phrases in here is just Ukraine fatigue. So we're all sat here getting on with our lives. I'm speaking to you right now. You're in Kyiv, yeah?
Yes. Joining you from our beautiful office. Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel kind of guilty because when I saw that you were 4 years old, I thought, oh my God, is that 4 years? How has that 4 years been in terms of, I'm interested in terms of the life that you live in the midst of a war, but as an operations guy, how has that been in terms of this huge interest and then maybe people forget?
So the big challenge that we had and we still have is we want the Kyiv Independent to be a big paper news organization that would have its role for Ukraine for decades to come. Right? It was never intended to be a project during the war and for the war. It just happened to be that's what happened to us, right? So the big sort of challenge that we had is, okay, so now we are in this situation where there is such a big demand for our work. How do we use it to build something long-term and big for the sake of covering Ukraine? And there was so much shitty coverage about Ukraine prior to 2022. The war in Ukraine started in 2014. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and launched a hybrid warfare in the east of Ukraine. Such a honestly missed opportunity to cover what was happening. So the demand for work was before there. It's just sort of, there was not enough, I think, proposition, and the people were not also fully understanding what's happening. There was a lot of confusion. So we understood that now in that moment in 2022, after Russia launched that gigantic open invasion and tried to take over the whole country, we had to do something differently, right? So my mission was essentially, I think operations is probably not was my main mission. My main mission was growth. The teams that I started working with and building them was reader revenue, marketing, product, communications. Those were sort of the key teams I focused my attention on. And the big challenge we had is, okay, so what is our journalism proposition? What is our business model? We started expanding significantly on the journalism we were doing. Moving from just sort of breaking news was something that people really wanted and needed at the moment. But then we started doing frontline coverage, hardcore frontline coverage. And that to this day remains one of our big different unique things. And also as the frontline got significantly more deadly and harder to access, there's less international media there. So we are essentially doing the work that others are not often taking the risk to do or are ready to do or don't know how to do. So that one, but we also started doing more. We started doing business coverage. It was the second part of 2022. I remember we launched culture coverage. We, in the next 2023, we launched a separate team of investigative reporters working on investigating Russian war crimes in Ukraine and producing documentaries. And to this day, we produced 9 documentaries and we are publishing our 10th one in 2 weeks. about Russia militarizing Ukrainian children and essentially recruiting Ukrainian children to their army. Those are very hard topics, and those are something that other media, like New York Times or Washington Post, they do good stuff often, sometimes bad stuff, but often good stuff. But they're not gonna do this. They're not gonna launch a separate investigative team on Russian war crimes, and we can do it because this is our main sort of most important area we are covering, right? And we are here for the long haul. So that was big part of what we wanted to do, is to just do more good journalism. But the second part was, how do we want to finance it, and how do we want to build the model that would allow us to do it long term and not be dependent on waves. So Kyiv Independent, we launched with the Patreon as a membership model, and we got a few hundred members. When Russia invaded, it went significantly up. It went to like 6,000, a bit over 6,000. But then the number actually started to fall. I remember in 2020, like spring 2022, because a lot of people just decided to donate this way, but they never intended to stay, right? We had a big, very successful crowdfunding campaign on GoFundMe, which raised a bit over $2 million to this day, right? So, but those were sort of donations, right? They were very important for us to have the foundation to do more of our work, but it's hard for you to build a business model on this. You need to rely on a steady stream of funds to know who you want to hire, what positions you create, and so on. So we made the decision, it was a strategic decision in summer 2022, that we will stop promote any donations, and we will focus on building our membership, and we will focus on making an argument for people to stay, essentially, right? It was solving a puzzle from two different sides. How do we convince people to stay? And also, how do we bring new members to join us? And to this day, this has been one of my most important challenges that I've been working on, is to grow that membership base. So we moved from over 6,000 back then to now we are at 22,000 paying members. Our model is a bit like The Guardian, where our journalism is not behind the paywall, so it's available for free. And then people can buy a monthly subscription to get a few extra things like exclusive newsletters, events, Ukrainian lessons, discount for our store. It's a few different things, but a lot of the motivation for them is just that emotion to support us. Right now, I think I can say that we managed to succeed in a lot of it. Right now, 70% of our revenue comes from reader revenue, and that includes membership and donations. And that allows us to still grow and hire people.
Do you have to separate the idea that you're publishing from a war zone from the idea that you're building a media business?
I think you do. Look, I mean, it's probably impossible to separate it, right? For us, I did this calculation. More than 90% of our existence of the Kyiv Independent was during war, right? Active war. So it's definitely our identity as of today is shaped by the war, right? So I don't think it's impossible to separate it internally. And I think one of the things that we did is that we didn't want to also separate it externally, right? One of the strategies we decided to do is we're going to be very transparent about how do we build the Kyiv Independent. Why? First of all, because I think it's interesting for a lot of people of how do you build a news media during the war. And we wanted to use that interest to engage them and read our journalism. Second of all, because it helps build trust. And I think I want to stop on that point and highlight it. For us, the trust element is incredibly important. And I think, and I actually mean it, it's not a buzzword. Let me explain you why, right? We are competing not with Ukrainian media, we are competing with global publications that report in English, like New York Times, Washington Post, Guardian, The Economist, a long list, as well as local media in different countries who cover Ukraine for their audiences. We compete with them, essentially, because our target audience is in those countries. So we have to convince you, Peter, in UK, if you want to read about Ukraine, to not go and read a Telegraph story, but go and read the Kyiv Independent, right? That's not an easy sell. Many people who never heard about the Kyiv Independent, right? Like, what is it? Kyiv Independent? Is it like some government-backed something? Why do they have Kyiv in the name? They don't know it. They don't really know us, and which is fair, right? Like, it's to build the news brand takes a lot of time. So for us, that trust element is super important and crucial, because once we have the trust, we can actually show them our journalism. They can see it for themselves, that it's good, it's high quality, it's objective, but we need to like go through this first hard step of them actually getting the interest to look at us seriously. So that's why we also made the decision that for that trust building, transparency about how do we build the Kyiv Independent, partnerships with other media is very important. It's at the center of that trust building. And this is what we have been doing since, and I think it helps us build that connection.
One of your other revenue streams is content syndication, right?
Yes.
How does that work?
So it's not a big revenue stream for us. It's probably like 5% of our revenue comes from it. We are selling our journalism sort of access to it to Yahoo, MSN, Bloomberg, those are, and the other types of sort of news aggregators. For us, it's not that hard of a decision because we don't have a paywall. So the access to the journalism itself is free. And we also a young brand. So we are very interested in more people seeing it, learning about it, and then maybe going and consuming it directly. And also probably important thing to say, Kyiv Independent has been very native to social media right from the beginning. A lot of our growth happened from social media. So I think we have a lot of, like, big part of our identity is being present on different platforms and combining it under one brand. We figured out a way to kind of then bring them to something we control better, like website, newsletters. But we are very big on social media. We have a lot of newsletters. We are big on Reddit, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. It's a long list of platforms we are on.
You've also got the YouTube channel, right? And stuff going on in YouTube. I saw Dare to Ukraine, your new travel films.
Yes, we launched a travel show. Can you imagine?
When I saw it, I did think, yeah, maybe not yet. Part of what I find really interesting about that is the fact that you thought, okay, it's not just about the war. It's about Ukraine. And like you've just said, when the war's done, hopefully soon, however that happens, you do want to be there and you do want to get people to travel to Ukraine and do business in Ukraine and all the other things that you've said that you're covering.
We want that. We also want to be that paper with a center in Kyiv, with a center in Ukraine, but also that brings a lot of valuable journalism on the region. So we launched back a few years ago our coverage of Belarus. We have a Belarus weekly newsletter, which is actually in those circles one of the important news sources. We launched a newsletter about Russia this year, which is called "What the Fuck is Wrong with Russia?" And I'm sorry, I hope I can swear on this podcast.
Especially when you're talking about Russia.
Yes. So we decided, there's so much of misconceptions about Russia and also why this war happened. And Ukraine actually wasn't, Ukrainians were not that surprised. It started because Russia have been trying to invade Ukraine before for many years, centuries. So there was clearly a missing perspective and missing piece of journalism. So we decided, you know what, we will cover Russia as well. And this is what we've been also doing more. We are covering the region. We, in a way, started to cover more global stories, which are, since the war in Ukraine has such a tremendous impact on so many countries, continents. North Korea joined the war last year and started fighting in Ukraine. So who would expect a few years ago that would happen?
Even in the UK and in the US, the impact on the cost of living, you can trace it straight back to what went on, what is going on.
Cost of living, food security in Africa, Taiwan and so China relations. There are so many direct and indirect implications. To cover them is really important. And we also wanted to start covering them And that also is one of the aspects that we see for ourselves in the future, is that unfortunately we don't believe that Russia would sort of stop messing around in the with world security for many years to come, and that means we will have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to run out of stories to tell. I mean, you've done amazing stuff in those 4 years. I'm just looking at a list of the awards that you won, and it is incredible. And I think what's interesting, again, from a publishing point of view, is how you've pulled all these things together. You know, it's like, okay, we've got a media startup. What should we do? Okay, we're going to have to do quality journalism. We're going to have to build trust. We're also going to have to take control of our social media discoverability, and we'll have to build a membership offering. All of those things are for every publisher anywhere. You've just got this layer over the top of it, which makes life difficult, I would imagine. How do you figure out what to prioritize?
It's a hard question. I mean, I don't think I have a very good answer to it. I think part of our problem is sometimes we often struggle to prioritize, and there's so much we want to do at the same time. I think the way we set the priorities is team security is number one. We are living during the war. It has an effect on all of us. Our staff, majority of our team members is based in Kyiv, in Ukraine. We are a team of 80 people right now. We have over 60 people based in Kyiv. So that means that the sort of the security aspect for us is significantly higher and more important. We have a lot of frontline reporters who are doing very important but also very risky job. We have a lot of investigators in our team, investigative journalists who are doing both investigations on Russian war crimes, Russian sanction violations, but also on Ukrainian issues as well. And we've been getting backlash from every side, both from Russia, but also inside Ukraine as well. So that's a lot of challenges, and the security here is the number one priority, both physical and digital, because we've been also having regular hacker attempts from Russia. We confirmed a few from Russia. We know we have confirmations that different like Russian hacker groups have been specifically targeting Kyiv Independent. Some others we haven't identified, but we can assume. So we had situations like this, and we do prioritize this. I think that's number one. But the number two is, do we give our readers what they want and cover their sort of needs? And it's a tricky one, because since we don't have like this tangible connection straight away with our target audience, the majority of them are not in Ukraine, right? Like 90% of our members are not outside of Ukraine, more than 90%. So for us, it's a bit harder to fully like get that feel of what they want to read about. And we need to combine our local, unique, on-the-ground expertise, but also their sort of demands for what they want to read, right? And that's hard. And I think part of how we solve it is by the teams we have. We have majority of our team members are Ukrainians, but we have actually amazing colleagues who are from different countries. We have our best frontline correspondent is Australian. We have a Japanese reporter. We have a lot of people from America, from actually Great Britain has a big representation in Kyiv Independent. We have an audience manager, Elsa. She's from UK, but she now lives in Kyiv. So we have this sort of international team structure that I think helps us, but also we try to spend a lot of time talking to our members and understand, is this the angle? Is this the enough level of details, right? Like those sort of things we try to balance for them. For us, that's number two, because it's very important not to miss that moment where that demand for journalism changes. And it is changing, and it will change. Ukraine fatigue is definitely a factor. I think we've been able to adapt quite well to still grow both our team and our membership base. But people are getting tired of the war, unfortunately, right? And we need to keep finding different ways and angles to keep them interested, to find niches and so on. And this is another big priority. The third one is having probably the business model that would support it long term, right? We are owned by our own sort of people who started the Kyiv Independent. We don't have an outside one investor or owner, and that's a privilege but also a responsibility, right? We are very happy to make our own decisions, but also we need to make sure that in order to stay independent, you need to make your own money.
Yeah.
Right, so we make the big focus on growing our membership, but also we've been diversifying and experimenting with a lot of revenue streams, syndications you mentioned before. We launched a store last year, which became actually, I think it's our second biggest revenue stream right now. It's been a very sort of successful launch where we sell clothing, and now we launched our first print magazine there, so people can feel the Kyiv Independent. We have advertising, which is not very big at the moment, but we are growing it because we believe that the demand for it will grow in the future. We launched a separate team of it's a separate team of researchers, which is called KI Insights, and they are doing on-demand research. Think of like Politico Pro or Economist Intelligence Unit as a reference. And this is also one of our bets that we want to have a revenue that comes, it's a B2B sort of source of revenue. It's less emotional, more service driven. And it's one of also of our strategies to have a diversified financial portfolio for us long term.
Wow. It's got to be keeping you busy, that.
We are kept busy for sure.
So I guess the one thing you don't have, or maybe I'm wrong, but you don't have events. Because that's got to be really difficult, right?
That's true. Although we are actually doing our first live event in New York in December.
Wow!
It's in 2 months. We are very excited. It's gonna be a sort of like a fundraising type of event, but it's also be a storytelling event. And the goal of it would be to share some stories from Ukraine in a live format and also fundraise for our war crimes investigative unit. It's a cool story. I think I want to share it on this podcast if you don't mind. We got a very cool hire at the Kyiv Independent over the last months. The former vice president of Axios and Politico, Danica Stanchu, she joined our team. She moved from Washington, D.C. to Kyiv, actually. She relocated. And she now leads our fundraising team that works on those more institutional, sort of philanthropic engagements. And she's taking the lead on that event. So I think it's a very cool story of also growing our team and making it stronger, and also bringing the direct connection to our readers on the ground in different places around the world. We want to do more of that next year.
Very cool. Okay, so really my last sort of focus is your anniversary. 4 years, all the stuff that we've talked about. But you're not just saying, oh, happy birthday to the Kyiv Independent. You're saying, okay, we're going to use this as an opportunity to try and get some attention again, to try and grow that subscriber base or the member base, right?
Yeah, so those kind of campaigns have become one of our main ways to grow. We used to do them once a year. This year we're doing it twice. And the idea is very simple. We take a goal that we want to achieve, we make it public, and we plan a few weeks of very active campaigning around that goal. Last time we did it was 20,000. This time it's going to be 25,000. It's going to be around November, our 4th anniversary. And it will be about us getting ready for next year, essentially. I think those campaigns is a very sort of effective way to focus attention. We got inspired from Zetland. It's a Danish membership-driven news publication. They are our good friends. We took sort of their idea, but we adapted it for our realities. So every time we do it, we launch this campaigning. We are making the counter and number of members public and like a live place on the website. Everyone can see it. It's actually getting very addictive because we have this like nice circle animation every time. I get addicted myself. So we're gonna launch on November 11th. This is our birthday, and the cool thing that we do that maybe I would recommend also to other media managers is we are making partnerships with other publishers for those campaigns, and that we essentially want to be friends and partners with other publishers who have similar values and we respect them. I think there is a lot of value to this. If you want to write a story about Ukraine, we'll help you. If you want to maybe screen a documentary from Kyiv Independent, we'll help you. If you want to write a story about the Kyiv Independent, we will also help you, because there is also interest in that very often in different countries. And if you want to make a call to action to your audience, we would appreciate that. And those sort of things that really help us build this connections, I think, in different countries. So last time we did this campaign, we selected 10 countries where we have the biggest member base. And for each country, we looked for a partner. And for each country, we launched like separate messages on the website. For example, we have the biggest amount of members from the United States, probably like close to 40%, but that we calculated that per capita, actually Denmark is on the first place.
Oh, wow.
So we told our readers in Denmark, like on the website, we did the geo-targeting, told them you are the first in the world. For people in Sweden, they were actually second in the world. We told them you were like second.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to beat Denmark. So we launched a community map. It's a live map on our website where you can see our members in different cities, and it gives you a feel of our audience. And we did a whole campaign around that map. So this time we're gonna do something similar. Yes, we found it one of the most effective instruments for us to grow our base of supporters and members.
Do different countries want different sorts of coverage from you?
I think yes, actually they do, and they have different consumption habits. So both in terms of interest, we see that like countries in the Nordics are more attentive to like human life stories and so on. We see overall that Europe is actually very interested in Ukraine, and I think if we find the right angles, we give it to them. United States is a very big country, so it's our biggest market. For United States, we're probably not we still have a lot of room to grow, but for us, it's already very big. But for us, probably it's less maybe of the country split, it's more of the interest split for us, right? Is because if you are only reading like one story per few months about Ukraine, it's not that easy to straight away convince this person to go and read the Kyiv Independent. Like it's easier for them to read that story on New York Times and then move on. But then if they have a bigger interest for different reasons, personal, professional, so on, this is where we come into play, right? We want to capture this more engaged audience. And for us, moving them from, reading, let's say, a story once a few weeks to once a week to read not just about the war, but about other things to then become a member is essentially what we would try to achieve, because so far our churn is something that we are very proud of. It's less than 2% on average per month. And that allows us also to sort of, I think, to keep growing, is that we are able to convince people to stay in through different ways, but mostly through being, I think, very transparent and having this horizontal connection with them.
Are newsletters a big driver for your engagement?
Yes, it's probably one of the biggest drivers right now. We have 7 or 8 newsletters. I need to check. We launched one last month, so a number change. Right now, it's really one of the best drivers of our membership. And the way we use it, it's a sort of a combination of, we have a lot of call to actions for membership inside of newsletters, but also we have this email marketing strategy where every week we are sending a letter to everyone who subscribed to our newsletters. And it's a mix of journalism and marketing, essentially. It's a narrational letter, but then it has a very specific, clear call to actions at the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And those letters could be about different things. It could be about something happening in the news. It could be about something about the team. It could be about the ideas we support, right? I mean, recently we sent a newsletter about this community map I mentioned. We often sometimes showcase things like how do you, adapt to blackouts as Russia is attacking energy infrastructure. How do you as a news organization is adapting to this, right? Like you need to have internet lights to send news. And now Russia actually launched a very big attack on energy last week. And there are a lot now power cuts in Kyiv started again. So maybe we'll write about that soon again.
How do you protect against that?
Well, it's been an evolution. Russians started that in 2022. I remember in that winter, I've learned a lot about voltage systems. We bought a lot of these gigantic power banks. I've learned that, microwaves has like a very big spikes in energy consumption, so it can break them down. I think broke one, but put in a microwave into it. We bought Starlinks. We as a backup source of internet for us. Right now, I think we have a much more stable setup. We have a generator in the office that takes like 1 minute to switch. If the power goes down, it affects our bills, but the stability is much better now. I think the office is it's a more productive space during those moments. But actually, if people are working remote, it makes it harder because if they lose electricity at their homes, if you need to climb like 15 floors to get to your apartment, it could be tricky.
How many people are actually in your office?
Probably like 60.
It's a pretty big office.
It is a pretty big office, yeah. It's our third office. We've been changing them.
Getting bigger every time.
Yes. The last time we moved this was a year ago. It was actually the reason we moved was to have a better setup for blackouts and winter. Because in our previous office it was very cold. Without electricity, the heating was connected to ventilators, and when they were not working, it was getting freezing very quickly. So we wanted to move to this new one to have a better heating and electricity one.
Wow, amazing. Well, do you know what? I just hope that we can talk again in 4 years, maybe less, and the war is over, and you can just focus on building this amazing media business instead of all the other complications that you're having to deal with at the moment.
Thank you. I hope so as well. I'll keep you posted.
We're grateful to all our guests for taking the time to speak to us at Media Voices. But I'd like to say a very special thank you to Zakhar and the team at the Kyiv Independent. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us, but also thank you for the incredibly important and inspiring work you do. If you want to find out more about the Kyiv Independent and support them on their 4th anniversary, go to Kyiv.independent.com. And don't forget, we have a write-up of the key learnings from this interview on voices.media, or dropping into your inbox if you've signed up to the publisher newsletter, also on voices.media. We'll be back next week with another look at the people and the products powering publishing's future. Until then, keep up with all things Media Voices by following us on LinkedIn or subscribing to the publisher newsletter over on voices.media.